Welcome back. We're at the Bebout Veterinary Medical Center. Dr. Brandon Bebout and Sydney. Good morning.
How's it going?
It's going great. Okay, so we just talked about a disease, and this is the complete opposite
Correct.
of that disease.
Yes.
We're talking Addison disease.
Yes, Addison's. And so the claim to fame with Addison's, as far as on the human side of things, is JFK, John F. Kennedy Jr., had Addison's disease. And so in humans, it causes hyperpigmentation. That's why he had such a nice tan. But anyway, with dogs, again, it's the opposite of Cushing's. Cushing's is hyper, too much cortisol from your adrenal glands, and now we're hypoadrenocorticism, so too little cortisol coming from your adrenal glands. It is also called the Great Pretender because Addison's can show up on your doorstep looking like anything, and if you do not have it on your differential list, you will get fooled and you will miss it. The typical case that comes in, and I've had them come in wobbling and ataxic or inability to walk straight, and they've had low blood sugar. In Sydney's case, she had an azotemia, which means she actually had what looked like some kidney disease. So she was that dehydrated that those kidney values were up. They can present as intermittent GI signs, and that's the big one is, every 3 weeks or every 3 months, she'll go through a spell where she won't want to eat or will have diarrhea, sometimes with blood. There might be vomiting. We might be a little bit down and out, or maybe not the life of the party. Why? Because we don't have any cortisol. We don't have our fight or flight hormone. And that can happen for a number of reasons. Idiopathic or immune mediated, so the body's destroying the adrenal gland. And so these guys can present as a pretty healthy dog with just a little bit of an ailment or a clinical sign with the hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, or diarrhea, or they can present in an Addisonian crisis. And one of the things we see with that is we see a big shift in our electrolytes. So our sodium starts to drop and our potassium starts to increase. Okay. And that has to do with another piece of that adrenal gland, a layer that secretes what's called a mineralocorticoid or a salt hormone, so aldosterone as it's called. And so when that potassium goes up, potassium is a very sensitive electrolyte, and the higher potassium goes, the lower your heart rate goes. And so you get a potassium of 10, you are in serious danger of losing your life. Wow. And again, it's called the Great Pretender, and so it can look a lot like anything. And so many times they've been treated for diarrhea or inaptitude and those type of things, and then eventually they'll come in on a crisis. So how do we go about chasing that down? We start with blood work and those type of things. Your fecals are negative, your x-rays are negative, and on blood work you might see the high potassium, the low sodium. So we look at that ratio, and 25, 23, 21, we start getting that thing start dropping. Addison's becomes really, really high on your list. If I were to have a favorite disease, it's Addison's. I don't wish it upon anybody, but one, you can be treated successfully, and I look like a hero, and so it's a win-win. And so you go through something called an ACTH stimulation test. We are essentially giving what the pituitary tells the adrenal gland, and it squeezes those adrenal glands. Give me all the cortisol you got, and then I'm going to test you in an hour. Okay. And then you look at it and you say, less than 0.2. You have no cortisol. Wow. And so we know that there is nothing in there. And so then you get diagnosed as Addison. And so the 4 mainstays of therapy with Addison's: fluid resuscitation, so these guys are typically dehydrated, glucocorticoid or prednisone, so they're on prednisone every other day, maybe once a day at a very, very low dose, just physiologic doses. They need electrolyte stabilization, and that usually happens with the fluids. And then finally, mineralocorticoids. So they get once a month injection forever, called DOCP. And it is the cure. And then you go with life, and every 4 weeks you might get a bath and you get your DOCP shot, and you're on your little tiny doses of pred.
Yeah. So before we go, we know in Cushing's 8 to 10-year-old, when will that Addison's show up in a...
Super question, because it can be as early as 8 weeks and has been reported as old as 18 years.
Wow.
Anybody can get Addison's at any moment. You may not have Addison's today, and you could have Addison's tomorrow. Wow. Cost is something to quickly talk about. Big dogs, Great Danes, are actually predisposed to Addison's. That can be a $400 injection every single month. And so if I were you, not that I've mentioned this before, but insurance is a really, really good idea. We had Benelli on for an insurance. He has Addison's. He comes in every month. And so it is definitely something to think about if you're thinking, okay, I got to give away my Camaro in order to treat my dog for Addison's, which most of you out there would. And so something to think about.
Awesome. So if you have any questions, contact the Be About Veterinary Medical Center. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Stay with us again next week as we bring you another edition of Pet Talk.
Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button. And for the latest news anytime, download the NTV News app.